Good morning, Year 11. I hope this assembly finds you well. I just wanted to take the opportunity before we got to half term to share a few messages and points that I'm hoping will put your mind at ease and set you up for a relaxing and well-deserved half-term break. The first thing I wanted to talk about was just how impressed I and other members of staff have been by the level of attendance and engagement that you've shown this half term. It's been a challenging time, and for you as a year group in particular, who were so close to their exams, it's been especially testing. And so it's fantastic to have seen just so many examples across the year group of a willingness to learn, a resilience in the face of some of the challenges that remote learning has thrown up, the self-motivation to keep going when things might be tough, and to set that routine and get into the rhythm of lessons while working from home. And all of that has been reflected in the number of Hall of Fame nominations that came from staff for Year 11 students, far more than we were in a position to recognise in that first round of the Hall of Fame earlier this half term. It's also reflected in the large number of students that will have received over the last few days pin badges for attendance, attitude to learning and progress. Now, for us, that has not come as a surprise. It's what we've come to expect from you as a year group, but it's no less of an achievement. The numbers on the slide at the moment are a comparison of your attitude to learning at the last monitoring point compared to those of last year's Year 11s at a similar point in the year. And you can see that in most cases, for most groups of students, it's significantly better. And in fact, we've not had a Year 11 cohort that have demonstrated such a positive attitude to learning before. And as I've spoken to you about before, attitude to learning is such a key marker of how successful you're going to be. And for a year group to have that attitude to learning score in January was a marker of what you would have gone on to achieve in those exams had they taken place. So we want the absolute best for you. We believe in you as a year group, and those numbers, and not just those attitude to learning numbers, but things like your attendance, which in spite of COVID has remained really positive. We want to support you as much as we can. And I'm hoping that that's come through in the support that you've had this half term and the provision of the lessons that you've received from members of staff. So it's been fantastic to see so many of you make the most of that opportunity that remote learning has provided. Obviously, there's still an awful lot of uncertainty around about what replaces those exams. And I know that will be a cause of anxiety for many of you. So while the thought of not doing the exams might initially have brought a sense of relief, you might be anxious about one, several, or all of the following. You might be worried about how else you're going to be assessed and what exactly that might look like. You might be concerned that your mock exams might end up being the basis of your grades and that you didn't give your best efforts or perform as you hoped. I can give you reassurance that that won't be the case. They are not going to be the be-all and end-all of how your grades are determined. You might feel you'd not performed well in Year 11 before Christmas, and in some ways you were looking at the exams as a chance for things to come good, and you might feel that that's an opportunity now lost. You might feel that the pressure is on in every lesson to perform all of the time, and you might be concerned that actually that's too much pressure. And you might just be anxious about not knowing and the uncertainty of the situation. What I did want to do was just talk about at this point what we do know and what we don't yet know in terms of what's coming further down the line, in terms of that replacement for the exams. What we do know is that grades should be awarded based on the grade that you're performing at and not what we think you should get, okay? We also know that grades will need to be comparable to previous performance at the school. So a school that previously one year was doing amazingly well isn't suddenly going to be doing terribly. And this stands you in good stead because students in previous years at the Garibaldi School, as you will know, have done extremely well. We know also that lots of evidence should be used to determine your grades, not just a mock exam paper. You should also be assessed in as close to the normal way as possible, and that's why we've advocated business as usual. And the things that are happening in your lessons and the assessments that you're doing as part of those are no different from what you would have been doing in normal circumstances. We also know that there will be a process that teachers will go through to award grades, and that will be checked within school and also from outside of school. What we don't yet know is what kind of performance or when performance evidence can be taken from. We don't yet know for certain what teacher assessed grades will be compared to. And although the government has talked about evidence, we don't know exactly what they mean by evidence. Will exam boards set external, what have been called in the newspapers and in the news, mini assessments? And will these be optional or will they be mandatory? And how important are those going to be? And finally, what will the external checks on teacher assessment look like and who might do those? So there are still unanswered questions and we might have to wait a couple more weeks yet until we get some answers to those. However, as the message has been right from the start of this half term, it's important to focus on what you can do now. And the most important thing is to continue to attend, work, and submit the best you can. Teachers are using live lessons and the assignments to give you lots of opportunities to demonstrate what you can do. So please use them. But that doesn't mean that every lesson or every piece of work is a test. And while some people could be doing more, some people are trying to do too much. And it's going to be important to get that balance right. So what you need to do is be honest with yourself about where you're at. Are you someone who could be doing more? Or are you someone who's trying to do everything and actually need to maybe reassess that amount of time that you're putting into those pieces of work that are being set? Because not every lesson and not every piece of work is a test. In normal circumstances, after half term, those first 2 weeks would have been your final set of mock exams. These won't be taking place. Now, we may reschedule these once we know more about how the government wants us to determine your grades, but I can give you reassurance that there will be no mock exams before Easter. Because what we want is for you to have had time in school, in lessons, well before you sit any mock exams. If they do run, we'll make sure you have plenty of notice in advance so that you can feel prepared if they come further down the line. So that phrase, diamonds are made under pressure, might seem like a cliche, but periods like this might be uncomfortable and they might be disconcerting, but they are points that will test and develop your character. They'll put you outside your comfort zone and they'll give you the opportunity to develop in ways that otherwise you wouldn't. And while right now it might be difficult to recognise that, further down the line you will look back at these points and hopefully reflect on what it was that you got out of that situation. So I've referred to this chap before. This is John Adams, the second president of the United States of America, and his kind of phrase was, every problem is an opportunity in disguise. So what are the upsides of the current situation? You have had a chance to develop your skills of independent working, something that in the long term will be of great benefit to you, even though it's felt like a struggle at times. Your GCSEs aren't going to come down to solely exam performance. And so for many of you, actually that provides an opportunity, a chance to demonstrate what you can do outside of that kind of pressure cooker environment of time pressured exams. It's also been a chance to develop your computer literacy amongst other things. And let's be honest, because of Teams and live lessons, you've all had plenty of practice with video calls to avoid this kind of rookie mistake. So this did make me laugh when I saw it yesterday, and I thought I'd share it just for a little bit of light relief.
Mr. Ponton, I believe you have a filter turned on in the video settings. You might want to
we're trying to, can you hear me, Judge?
I can hear you. I think it's a filter.
It is, and I don't know how to remove it. I've got my assistant here. She's trying to, but I'm prepared to go forward with it. I'm here live. I'm not a cat.
I can see that.
Genius. So over the next few weeks, and I suppose over the next few months, it's going to be important to keep in mind what you can and can't control. You can't control, for example, when lockdown is going to end, or when the government decides about arrangements for replacing your exams. Those things there you cannot control. But what you can control is how you react to the situation and what you do in response. And reminding yourself of this is also under your control, because it might well have been that over the last few weeks, worrying about the things on the left-hand side there have stopped you focusing on the things on the right. It's important to reach out if you're struggling. This is understandable and you won't be alone. And I know that some of you already have done that, and that is really good to see, because what you need to do is talk about and share those concerns, because often that can help you to kind of self-manage them, because verbalizing those concerns can sometimes make them seem more achievable. So use the support of staff. And while sharing your concerns in a kind of live lesson environment or in the group chat might not feel appropriate and probably isn't the right way to manage that, staff are only an email away and will be more than happy to offer that help and support. It's also important to look after your mental health. The impact of lockdowns on this, for not just young people like yourselves, but for people of all ages, it is well documented. So it's normal to be feeling anxious at a time like this. So don't be afraid to ask for help. Use the support of your family, friends, and staff to talk about how you're feeling if you need to. And talk kindly to yourself. It's often easy to talk yourself down, do yourself a disservice. So remember to look to the positives, what you can do, rather than focusing on the things that you can't yet do. The school website is a really good source of information. Student Services have put together a wealth of information there for you to refer to. And you can find it by going to the Student Services tab on the website, and then in particular the Mental Health and Wellbeing section. So please remember, we talk a lot about resilience and developing that, but that does not mean that you never get scared, upset, anxious. Being resilient is carrying on in spite of feeling like that, and often the way that you can carry on is by sharing that burden and talking about it with others. I also wanted to take the opportunity to talk about your next steps and what happens after year 11. So for many of you, you've applied to Garibaldi sixth form, and just wanted to let you know that provisional offer letters will be coming out in the coming days, and interviews are going to be taking place after half term. It's not too late to apply for sixth form. The application form is still open, And you can find this on the website under sixth form notice board, and then by selecting applications in the left-hand menu. And it's worth saying at this point that you're in a privileged position. You are Garibaldi students currently, and so even if a couple of months down the line you decide you want to apply, that application will be considered. Okay. For many of you, you got the chance to have your ideas for careers interview before Christmas, but unfortunately these had to be curtailed when we kind of went into lockdown again. So for those of you still waiting for yours, these are going to be restarting remotely after half term, and we've made extra arrangements to try and make sure that we can fit in a careers interview for all of you before the end of the year, even though we've lost a half term of that provision. So look out for further details on that over the next few weeks. And this week is National Apprenticeship Week. And for those of you interested in apprenticeships, there have been lots of opportunities to find out information around this. Miss Bleasdale shared some resources from West Notts with you via email earlier in the week to highlight some of that support that they offer. And if you are interested in finding out more about that, contact Miss Bleasdale or Miss Smedley, and they'll help guide you through how to apply for an apprenticeship. And finally, from me, what I want to do is to encourage you to make the most of half term as a chance to relax, recharge, and recuperate, ready for half term 4. This has been a particularly difficult half term. Half term 3 is always a challenge because it's dark, it's cold, we've just gone past Christmas, and this one has been doubly difficult. So make the most of the time away from a computer screen. There won't be an expectation that you'll be working over the half term. So use it as a chance to get some fresh air outside, leave the house within obviously the limits of lockdown, and recharge your batteries. It goes without saying, we're all missing you. I'm sure just as much as you're missing us. And it just leaves me to say we really look forward to having you back in school as soon as we can, back into lessons, getting back to some sense of normality. But between now and then, stay safe, stay well, enjoy the half term, and look forward to seeing you in half term 4. Thanks for listening.